Hi guys, it's Claire. Welcome back. Today I am going to be doing the mid-year book tag, which has been going around lately, and I was kindly tagged by Chris over at Bookish Cauldron and by Sabrina at Unmanaged Mischief. So I thought I would answer these questions because they're pretty fun, and it seems like a good way to look back on how the year has been going so far. So let's get into it. Question 1 is the best book you've read so far in 2018, and for that I'm going to go with Half a Lifelong Romance by Eileen Chang. This is a tragic love story set in Shanghai in the 1930s and 40s, and it manages to be both personal and everyday while also having the dramatic sweep of an epic. Question 2 is the best sequel you've read so far in 2018, and that doesn't really apply to my reading life, so I thought I would make up a new question instead, and that is the book that you have most recommended and or gifted to people in 2018. And for that I have Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee, because I think this is just one of those books that really hits the spot for a lot of different kinds of readers. It's well written and literary. It is about a period of world history that not a lot of readers know much about. It's an emotional family saga that feels very universal in a lot of ways, and it's a story about refugees, which feels very relevant and vital to what is going on in the world today. Question 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to. And to be honest, I don't pay that much attention to new releases, and I usually don't get around to them until several months or maybe even a year after the fact. But one of the books that I have had on my TBR for a while that came out in February is The Line Becomes a River by Francisco Cantu, and I'm going on a road trip in a couple of weeks, and I do think I'm going to listen to this while I'm driving. From what I understand, this is a kind of memoir type book that touches on Francisco Cantu's experiences as part of the Border Patrol in the Southwest US, so unfortunately touching on topics that have been in the headlines, especially as of late in the US, but I've heard great things about it, so I am hoping to get to it soon. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and again, I don't pay that much attention to new releases and don't have like a huge list of books that I'm anticipating, but I did recently download Severance by Ling Ma on NetGalley, and that comes out on August 14th. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic satire in which this global epidemic called Shen fever is spreading, and I guess it kind of shuts down brain function so that people can only perform like rote tasks over and over again until they die. I don't know. I'm not super far into it. It's pretty good so far though, so I will report back in August once I've finished it. Question 5 is the biggest disappointment of the year so far, and unfortunately for this one, I'm gonna have to go with Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Tien. Say it ain't so. So many people who I admire on BookTube have really loved this book, including Sean from Sean the Book Maniac and Jennifer at Insert Lit Pun, and I was so ready to love this book, and it just wasn't meant to be. There were so many things that I found disappointing and exhausting about this book, so I'll be talking about that more in my June wrap up, but yeah, this was a real bummer. Question 6 is the biggest surprise of the year so far, and for that I'm gonna say Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which I recently reviewed, and based on what I had read about it prior to reading it, I thought it was going to be kind of a cute, quirky little book, which in some ways it is, but it was also much darker than I was expecting, so that was kind of an unexpected surprise, but one that was ultimately pretty interesting. Question 7 is your favorite new author this year, and for that I'm going to have to go with Eileen Chang, Queen Eileen, if you will. I first heard about her over on Matthew Sharappa's channel, and I'm kind of slowly making my way through all of her books that have been published in English. And in some ways I like to kind of liken her to Edith Wharton just because of the ways that she writes so astutely about upper-class Chinese society, but if anything, she's darker than Edith Wharton, and her writing also has a very glamorous and almost cinematic feel to it that is very specific to her. Question 8 is newest fictional crush, and listen, I know that a lot of people out here on sort of this side of BookTube are too dignified and evolved to answer this question, but I assure you, I am not. The biggest literary smoke show I've encountered so far in 2018 was definitely Taro Azuma from A True Novel by Minae Mizumura. And that makes sense because he is the Heathcliff character in this Japanese retelling of Wuthering Heights. And if anything, he's more charming and less monstrous than Heathcliff was, while still having a lot of mystery and allure. And all three narrators in this novel are drawn to him in different ways, and so you as the reader are also drawn to him. Question 9 is favorite new character, and for that I'm going to go back to Half a Lifelong Romance and say that Manjun is my favorite new character this year. She is the female protagonist in this book, and in a lot of ways she's sort of a quintessential heroine, but she also is kind of ahead of her time in her ideas about women and women's place in the world. And she also has a lot of defiance and sort of female rage in her. And at one point she does try to like cut another character with a broken rice bowl because she's like not here for it. And I just thought she was great. Question 10 is a book that made you cry, and I don't think I've actually cried over a book since I read Blue Nights by Joan Didion last year, but one book that did make me cry on the inside was I'll Be Right There by Kyung-Suk Shin. This is a book about student protests in South Korea in the 1980s, and it's also kind of more generally a reflection on youth and beauty and the fleeting nature of all things. So it's very sad and very tragic and, you know, really tugs at the heartstrings. Another book that almost made me cry recently was Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. This is the story of one of the last men who was forced to make the journey from Africa to the American South during the time of slavery, and it's him telling Zora Neale Hurston his life story. And when he's telling this story, he's like in his late 80s, but you can still feel on every page how much he misses Africa and how much he wishes he could go back, like in every fiber of his being, and it's just so sad. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and going through my Goodreads challenge from this year, I realized I don't read that many books that explicitly have happy endings or are meant to make you happy. So for this, I'm gonna have to go with Meaty by Samantha Irby just because it was hilarious, and Anne of Green Gables because that's kind of the only comfort read I've read so far this year. Question number 12 is your favorite film adaptation that you saw this year, and for this I'm gonna have to go with Lust Caution, which is a 2007 film by Ang Lee that was adapted from an Eileen Chang short story. And I know it's blasphemous to say this, but I preferred the film. I just thought the film was so well done, and the acting is just incredible across the board. Tong Wei is the female protagonist, she's great, and Tony Leung is the male protagonist, and he is like incredible in everything that he's in. He's phenomenal. If you've never seen a movie with Tony Leung in it, you should go watch In the Mood for Love, like right now. It's on YouTube with English subtitles. I'm gonna link it down below. So yeah, much as I love Eileen Chang, I thought the movie was great. Question 13 is your favorite video you've made so far this year, and this might seem random, but I'm gonna have to go with my January reading wrap-up part 2, because that's the one where I talked about A True Novel, The Fall of Language in the Age of English, and Pachinko, which were all books that I loved and also books that were kind of in interesting conversation with each other. So I just kind of liked how that discussion turned out. Question 14 is the most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year, and I actually haven't been buying that many books this year, so I'm gonna go with 2 that I got last year but read this year, and that would be A True Novel, just because it's a really beautiful like edition and the paper is super nice, and also Pachinko because this is actually the UK paperback edition, and I found this last summer at Walden Pond Books in Oakland, which is a great bookstore, and they weirdly sometimes carry the UK paperback editions of books, especially for like the Man Booker Prize and stuff. So yeah, I just kind of came across this edition really randomly, but it was before the US paperback was out, and I actually like this cover a lot better. So, and question 15 is what books do you want to read by the end of the year? And I'm kind of a mood reader or whatever, so I don't have a super set TBR, but I would love to get to In Search of Lost Time, Swan's Way by Proust. I was technically supposed to be buddy reading this with one of my IRL friends this month, but that is not happening, but hopefully it will by the end of the year. Another book that I really want to get to sometime soon is The Bridge on the Drina by Ivo Andrić, which is a story about a bridge in the former Yugoslavia that was recommended to me by a friend who studies Yugoslavia and the Balkans as part of her grad school research stuff. And she named her dog after Ivo Andrić because she loves this book so much. And also my landlord has read this book in the original Serbo-Croatian and said that he would talk to me about it once I've read it. Anyway, that's some of the stuff that I've been reading so far this year. I would say, oh my god, I can't believe it's already the end of June, but honestly, if you're living in the US, I think we all could agree, well, not all of us, that November can't get here fast enough because holy shit, it just really gets grimmer by the day. Let me know what you guys have been reading in the first half of 2018 and what some of your plans for the rest of the year are reading-wise. Thanks so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time. Bye!